Today, I am sharing one of my favorite ways to create super fast change in your relationship. If you try this, you can literally start shifting the energy and vibe in just one day. I know that's hard to believe, but stick with me because this is real. Your brain has this hidden superpower, and when you use it right, it is a total game changer. I am Lindsay. This is Loving with Intention, and we are diving right in. So, you know the thing when you buy a new car, let's say you buy a red SUV, and suddenly you start seeing red SUVs everywhere. Before, you didn't notice them at all. But now they're just popping up. They're at every intersection, you're driving by them, they're at every parking lot, and you were like, did we all buy the same car at the same time? And the reality is that is actually not what is happening, and it's not even that it's a coincidence. This is the work of your reticular activating system, or your RAS for short. It is a little network in your brainstem that acts like a filter for your attention. So its job is to sift through the massive amount of information that we take in every single second of every single day, and it just flags the things that are important to you because you can't possibly take note of everything. So here's how this works. Before you bought your red SUV, you probably started thinking about it. So you're thinking about it a lot, and then you start researching it. So you're Googling it, you're typing it in, you're looking at pictures, you're looking at specs. I don't know why I said spec. That is not a word that I would usually say, but it sounded like a car word. So you are researching it. Now you're talking to your friends about it. So you're like checking in. Do you know about this car? What do you think? You go to every time you drive past the dealership, you're looking at the car. You go to the dealership, you test drive the car, and then you buy the car. The more you focused on the car, your RAS took note of this and it tagged the car as important to you. Then, once you actually bought it, your RAS was like, all right, this red SUV is clearly very important to us. Let's keep an eye out for it. And we won't really notice the other cars because they're clearly not important. This is the important car. So now you are noticing red SUVs all over the place, and your RS is like ping, ping, ping every time they show up because you've told your RAS, this is important to me. Our RAS wants to make sure that we don't let any red SUVs slip by unnoticed because they are important to you. Thank you so much, RAS. I could talk about the RAS all day long, so we'll see how long this podcast is. I will try to make it bite-sized, but it is amazing. So before we get into how you can use the RAS to change the game in your relationship, I just want to share another example of how your RAS works for you, how this filter works for you. So imagine you're in a super busy restaurant with your friend. You're chatting with your friend, you can hear them talking, but the rest of everybody talking is just like that hum of noise that you hear. You can't really hear any words, you just hear this hum behind you. You're focused on your friend and you're chatting. And then somebody across the room says your name. They don't even say it that loud, but they say your name. And you look up. This is your RAS at work because your name obviously has been tagged as important for your whole life. This is something that is important to us. This is something that we pay attention to. Your RAS knows that. So even though there's a bajillion other words happening around you, your RAS is just filtering all that is not important until it hears your name. And then it alerts you, pay attention. This is important. So even though there are people who are talking louder than the person who said your name, you do not hear their actual words. So thank you again, RAS. I freaking love the RAS. We were talking about it this week in my women's group, Revive. And I was like, this is the next podcast episode. So it is so cool in so many ways. And I want to get into how it's really cool in your relationship. So it works in the same way for our relationship. And I'm going to share my personal experience of the RAS back in the really hard days of my relationship. So as I've shared, back in the hard days, we had 2 months of good times when we started dating, and then we had our first fight. And it really seemed to open the door to all of the fights, big, loud, ugly, painful, hurtful fights that were happening so frequently. And they were so awful, and they would happen. There was fun and there was love and there was so much fighting. And eventually we broke up. And as we got closer and closer to breaking up, I was telling my friends about our fights and all of the hurtful things that my partner would do. I would totally leave out the hurtful things that I would do. And it wasn't because I was hiding it. It was actually because I didn't see it at the time. I truly did not see how I was contributing to what wasn't working. But that is an entirely different podcast episode. So we can circle back to that another day. But I was telling my friends all of the things that my partner was doing that totally suck. I'm complaining to them. I would go to my therapist and I would tell her all of his crappy behaviors. And bless her, she would try to bring the focus back to me. And I would always just sneakily lead us back to, probably not so sneaky, but I would lead us back to talking about the hurtful things that he was doing in our relationship. And often after fights, I would go and I would grab my journal and I would write down word for word things that he said in fights. And I mean, word for word, what I remembered in that highly triggered state. I would write down the things that I said too. I would write down our conversation. So I'd be writing down the hurtful things that he said. And I told myself that I was doing this because, I could bring it to my therapist later, or I could process it when I wasn't so activated, or maybe I could show him later and then we could have conversations around it and heal. So I was just writing all of these things down. And then I would also ruminate. So I would think about the things that he said and the things that happened in our fight over and over and over. I would lose so much sleep just replaying arguments, thinking about old arguments, the next argument. I was just replaying these things in my mind and thinking about how bad things were. And of course, all of this actually came from a place of really wanting things to change, really wanting a happier relationship. Underneath all of this were these dreams and hopes of connection and ease. And also, the human brain does focus on the negative in general, and it is part of our natural negativity bias. We are wired to notice threats and notice challenges and things that could go wrong to keep us safe. So, this is like our nervous system keeping us safe. We are wired to see these things. So, it makes sense that they really stand out to us because our nervous system is going, this isn't safe. Notice this. Keep safe. Stay safe. So they really, really stand out to us just because our brain wants us to stay safe. And what I didn't realize was complaining about him to my friends, journaling about all of the hard stuff, talking to my therapist about all of the hard stuff, and ruminating on all of the hard stuff. I was literally telling my RAS the hurtful, unhealthy behaviors that my partner is doing are important to me. And we know, just like the red SUV, when you tell your RAS that something is important to you by thinking about it over and over again, it goes to work for us. That's what the RAS does. What a great little personal assistant. Just jumps on it, goes to work. You have told it this is important. So my RAS was like, okay, Lindsay, you are thinking about this so much and writing about it, complaining about it, talking about it. This must be really important. And then, bless my RAS, it was like, I got you. I will point out all of his unhealthy behaviors to you because they are so important to you. I was literally priming my brain to seek out negative things he was doing. And because the RAS is so freaking good at what it does, it actually filters out the other things going on. So, the positive things, the healthy behaviors that he was doing, the things that maybe I could appreciate that he was doing, because I've told it that those things aren't that important to me. I'm not thinking about those things. So it just shows you what you've primed it to show you, the important stuff, quote unquote. And the hard thing is that not only are we just seeing the bad stuff and seeing even more of it because of our RAS, we actually end up creating it. We create it. We do, and it is unfortunate, and let us talk about how we do create it. So when we are fixated on the negative aspects, so whether it's our partner's behaviors, the fights that we're having, the things that they say that are hurtful, the things that they don't say, the things that we want them to change, we start to live in that story in our brains. So in other words, we are telling ourselves that nothing will ever change, the relationship is bad, the things that my partner is doing, they're never going to do them differently. I live in this place of I'm so disappointed and I'm so frustrated. So I really want to just play this out for a second. If I believe that things are frustrating and my partner's unhealthy behaviors and patterns will never change, and there are so many things that they are doing that are wrong or hurtful, what happens when I believe this thought? Well, For one, we know the RAS will continue to give us evidence that this is true because that's its job. Thank you again, RAS. And if I believe that all of this is true, my energy changes. I'm not high vibing at all. I'm low vibing. And you can picture being in the presence of someone who is happy and playful and laughing versus somebody who's feeling down. They've got a straight face. They're not very playful. There's a huge difference in those energies. Our partner will feel that. And if I believe all of that to be true, how I actually act towards my partner changes. I'm going to be way more reactive to them. I will be possibly pointing out their crappy behavior. I was definitely doing that. I will not be laughing at any of their jokes. I'm much more likely to take things personally. Like if I really drop in and imagine myself in that place, which isn't that hard because that was me. I was here. I'm just not acting like, quote unquote, myself. I don't feel like me. I feel hopeless. I felt hopeless. I felt constantly discouraged. And I know that my partner felt scrutinized and criticized. He felt like he was walking on eggshells in our relationship because it was almost like he had to get things perfect or I would be on it and be like, that's not okay. You could have said that nicer. You should have done that differently. So it wasn't a great experience for him either. And of course, good things would happen. We would have fun times. But then the second he did or said something that didn't feel good, that would just be like 10,000 times bigger than the good stuff. And it would almost erase the good stuff. And I definitely know that I didn't even register a lot of the good stuff because my RAS had just tossed it out as not important. Understand this now. I did not know this then. So other ways that this ripples into our relationship is when we are primed to expect negative reactions from our partner, we often respond in a way that actually encourages these behaviors to continue. So, for example, if I am fixated on something like my partner never listens, they always brush off my concern, I'm likely going to approach them already feeling defensive and frustrated because that's the story in my head. They will sense that energy, and it's no surprise that it doesn't make them more likely to listen. It might even put them on the defensive. They sense that energy, their nervous system just already assesses something is wrong here, something's not safe, something's not okay. So suddenly, our expectations of not being heard or understood are actually being reinforced by the way that we approached and spoke to our partner, which, gosh, this just happens so innocently. We don't even know that this is happening. And it's not our fault. And I'm going to dig into that too. I'm not saying that we create these things, but we definitely do have a huge impact. If we are constantly thinking about our partner's flaws or mistakes, we are subconsciously projecting those thoughts onto them. For example, you might feel frustrated or irritated before they even do something because you're anticipating that they're going to do it. You're anticipating, they're going to be rude or they're going to be dismissive. This can make you way more likely to misinterpret neutral responses from them or even positive responses from them and see them as negative because you are already thinking about the flaws or mistakes that they make, which again, just confirms your expectations. So in a way, you really end up creating a cycle where your expectations make the situation worse. All this to say, when we are in a place of seeing the bad and not seeing any potential for change, we're focusing on what's not working, then we change and we actually create more of what we don't want because our partner is much more likely to have unhealthy reactions or unhealthy behaviors when they aren't feeling seen, loved, appreciated, cared for, when they feel like our energy is down, when we're feeling super disconnected. Now, again, I am not saying that you are the cause of your partner's unhealthy behaviors. They have their own stuff. They have their own unhealthy patterns, just like we all do. And they also have a choice in how they show up. What I am saying is that we actually have way more power than we think we do in shifting the whole dynamic. And that is why I'm always popping off about how one person can be the change, because it is so real. So if we imagine on the flip side, who would I be without this thought? Who would I be if I didn't believe that things would never change or that my partner was never going to stop doing these unhealthy behaviors? If I didn't believe that, I'd have hope. I would see them differently. I would be able to see the good things. I would feel more optimistic. I would see things that I could appreciate and maybe even express those things. This would make me show up differently. This would change my energy in the relationship. I would know that, oh, maybe if I do appreciate that thing, then things can change because I no longer believe that they can't. I would show them more kindness, give my partner the benefit of the doubt. I'd be able to use curiosity rather than judgment of their behaviors. So much goodness comes from shifting that belief. Our beliefs and what we choose to focus on changes everything. Everything. And I'm always throwing out the disclaimer that this isn't all on you. I mean, maybe you are listening with your partner right now, which is super freaking amazing. Hello to you both. We are about to talk about how you can use the RAS to your advantage, and you both can do this. And maybe it's just you listening, which is so amazing as well. I want you to know that I'm not saying this is all on you. And you are the one that's here. You are the one that's listening. You are the one that is clearly ready for change. So you are the one who gets to create that change. A lot of times when it comes to relationship growth, someone has to go first to get out of that gridlock. It was me in my relationship, and it felt totally frustrating at times. And I hear this from individual clients as well. Like, why me? Why does it have to be me going first? Why aren't we both doing these things together? But when we get stuck in that thinking, it doesn't help our relationship. So when I shifted back to focusing on me and changing the things that I had power over, which was all me, that is when things really started to change. It is a choice, and it's not an easy choice to make. And it requires recommitting over and over and over again in your journey, because it is so easy to fall back into negative thinking or old patterns or get frustrated or discouraged, which makes so much sense. And you got this. You totally got this. I put out weekly episodes so that you can have this consistency in your growth journey, so that you can hear me telling you week after week that you can do this. You got this. Keep going, because consistency and intention is what creates change. And I am so here with you on your journey. So we're going to get into now how we can use our sweet, sweet RAS to our advantage in our relationship. Because the good news is, and there's always good news, we can reverse this negative loop. If you have trained your brain to see the negative, you can totally train your RAS to see the positives instead. And then you get to watch your relationship change before your very eyes, just because you start thinking differently. Earlier this year, my partner and I had a period of stress from external factors in our lives, and it led to a whole lot of arguing. And I'm talking in the span of a few months, we argued more than we argued in the entire previous year in our relationship. It was a lot. And I'm so happy to share this, because conflict is normal. And even in a thriving relationship, conflict is normal. And it didn't mean that we didn't have a thriving relationship. It just meant some power struggle-y stuff was coming up, because it is prime time for that to happen when you have these external stressors. So what is different in a thriving relationship is we knew how to get out of it. Did we stay in it longer than I would have liked? Absolutely. Yes. And we didn't stay in it for nearly as long as we used to, for months and months of downward spiral. At one point, I went to my therapist and I started the session saying, okay, I know I am in a spiral of focusing on all of the negative things that are happening right now, and it is not helping our relationship. So by the end of this session, I want that to change. I really set us up. I just go in with a plan. And this is the added benefit of knowing about the RAS, because I knew what was happening. I knew I was fixating on all of these things. It took me a minute to realize it, but I realized it, and I went to her. And by the end of the session with my therapist, she had helped me do the very thing that I help my clients do, which was wonder and look under. As soon as she said to me, I wonder what might be going on under all of this conflict, I was like, of course, wonder and look under. Why didn't I think of that? Come on. And I laughed. And it is just so much easier, of course, for me to support clients in this, because when you're in it, you're in it. And again, I'm so happy to share this, because this is real life. We get stuck in these things. It can be, oh man alive, it can be so hard to use the tools when you are in it, which is why I love support. I love my therapist. I love the coaches that I work with, because they can help you see the things that you can't see, and sometimes just One little shift is all it takes. So with Wonder and Look Under, she helped me look at, what was under the surface of what was going on? What was the more vulnerable stuff? What fears might be coming up for both of us? What worries? What stories? What might we be telling ourselves? What unmet needs do we have in this situation? So by the time the session was over, my heart had completely softened. I pieced out of that session seeing my partner in a whole new light. And no joke, within a couple of days, things had completely turned around because I was now looking for the positives. I told my RAS to start noticing the good. I got really intentional about things. That's how I switch things up. So it all comes down to what we choose to focus on. And the more we focus on the positive in our relationship, the more we will see them. And if you think about it like planting seeds in a garden, if you plant seeds of appreciation and gratitude and seeing the good, that's what's going to bloom. You're going to get really pretty flowers. And if you plant seeds of frustration and resentment, that's what grows. I have lived it. I have seen it. And it is much more inspiring and fun to plant the things that create the beautiful flowers and the positive energy in your relationship. So, how do we train our RAS to work for us instead of sort of against us? It's still working for us, but it feels like it's against us. So, the first thing we can do, set the intention to notice the positive. Decide today you are going to look for things that you appreciate in your partner. Even if it's just one thing right now, hold on to that thought, keep it front of mind. And I know this can be really hard for a lot of people. I've heard from so many clients that they can't think of anything. They say there isn't anything good. It's all negative. Things do not feel good. So this can truly be anything. It can be a kind word that they said, a little thing that they did that helped you or made the day better. Maybe they smiled at you. Maybe they high-fived your child or mowed the lawn or made dinner. Maybe they unloaded the dishwasher. We know how the RAS works. It is science. So choosing to start to see the good is telling your RAS, find more of this, please. You can even start a journal if that's helpful. I definitely recommend doing that. At the end of the day, write down 3 things at night that you appreciate from your partner in the day and really sit with that. Read it over and over. Feel it. Feel the appreciation. Get that going in your body. Prime that RAS. And if you are really here to dive in, which I do believe you are, tell your partner the things that you appreciate. Think of how seen you feel when somebody says, hey, I really appreciate that thing you did, or thank you for doing XYZ. You get to do this for your partner, which really shifts the dynamic. And again, you're priming your RAS to see the good, which changes everything. So another thing you can do is speak about the good stuff more often. So if you find yourself complaining to friends like I was, complaining to your therapist or coach, or just focusing on the bad stuff with them, challenge yourself to start saying the good stuff. Start sharing positives. Start sharing the things that you appreciate. Tell your brain these things matter and they're worth remembering. And then your RAS can get to work on finding you more of that. And try countering the complaints with curiosity. Annoying, hurtful, painful things will still totally happen. And none of this is about toxic positivity or trying to pretend any of that didn't happen or just brushing it off, making it okay. We don't want to do that because that's not real life. And we're not going to believe that when we're just super positive and yeah, I'm just focusing on the good. It's all good. It's all good. But really we're hurt. That's just such a contrast that our body knows isn't real. So instead, you do have the power to shift things. When something hard happens, lean into curiosity. Curiosity is so huge in healthy relationships. Try shifting maybe your usual pattern that you have to asking yourself a question like, what might they be dealing with right now? Or is there something good that they did today that I didn't notice? Or what is the unmet need underneath this behavior that they're doing? This small pivot in your thinking can show your RAS that not every negative thing is important or has to be a downward spiral. It takes that negative focus off and changes it to curiosity, which is more neutral or even positive. And this is exactly what I did in that session with my therapist. I got curious with her help and saw that neither of us were bad people. I saw that just because we were having lots of conflict, that did not mean that we were returning to old patterns and things were going to get really bad, which when When I would go into a spiral, I would sometimes think that, like, have we lost everything that we have done over all of these years? And, that reflects the state of my nervous system and my negative thinking in that moment. So I was able to look under the conflict and see the tender parts of us that were underneath the surface. We were moving through some life stuff. And this shifted me out of obsessing about the surface stuff, the stuff that we see, and into getting curious and bringing compassion and love into our humanness. We're not going to get everything right. We're not going to get everything perfect. That's just not real life. And it makes sense that, we had unmet needs and things going on under the surface. It makes a huge, 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 huge difference. So, like we talked about, when we shift our focus to the positive, it changes the entire dynamic of our relationship. This subtle shift in our thinking can ripple out in so many ways. Let's take our car example again, your red SUV. Imagine now when your partner does something thoughtful, like brings you coffee in the morning. When you focus on that, it's like noticing your red SUV everywhere. These things just start to pop out at you. They're more visible. They start to show up everywhere. These things are already there. We're usually just missing them because of what we've primed our RAS to see. And the small gestures, the moments of support, the shared laughter, when you're tuned into that, those positive things really start to become your reality in your relationship. What you choose to focus on really, truly shapes your experience. If you look for the good, your brain is going to serve up more good. I can't say it enough. If we're constantly on the lookout for bad, our brain will serve up more of that. It's like holding a magnifying glass over certain parts of our relationship, and we get to decide what parts that we want to magnify. And remember, this is huge. Your RAS doesn't just create your reality, it reinforces it. If you focus on the good, you'll see more good, which makes you feel more connected and happier. This, in turn, makes it easier to keep focusing on the positive, creating this beautiful cycle of appreciation and connection. This is an upward spiral of goodness that gets to just keep getting better. And when we see more good, we're feeling connected and all of that good stuff, it creates this cushion of love and connection that makes it a whole lot easier to deal with the challenges that will happen and have conversations about the hurts that will happen. Imagine you've been focusing on what's not working for a really long time. So you're feeling disconnected, you're feeling hurt, you're feeling hopeless. There's lots of negativity happening. Because of that dynamic and the negative spiral in your relationship, it's much more likely that your partner is going to respond with defensiveness, shutting down, or criticism if you bring up something that hurts you. But if you imagine priming your RAS with all of that good stuff, you've been expressing appreciation, you're noticing the good, you're seeing them for their best intentions, you're noticing positive things, you're sharing those things with friends, you're increasing your energy and the vibe in your relationship, creating connection. Now, when your partner does do something hurtful, because we will hurt each other inevitably in our relationships, it's going to be a lot easier for them to hear you and validate you when you bring up your hurt, because you've created this emotional safety and the dynamic in your relationship has totally changed. It is way, way, way easier to hear hurt when someone is feeling seen, appreciated, and loved. And another cool thing about setting this intention and choosing to see the good is, this is something that my individual clients tell me all the time. When they start doing this, they start seeing their partner do it too. They start to hear appreciations that they weren't hearing before. They start to feel seen in their relationship. Their partner starts to greet them with a smile when they walk in the door. Their partner starts doing more around the house. Their partner starts saying thank you. I have heard countless examples of how this plays out. It is no small thing to start priming your RAS to see the good. You get to benefit from it too. This is not all about like, oh, I'm just going to focus on my partner and pour all this positivity into them, but I'm not getting anything in return. You're doing this for the greater good of your relationship. And deep down, you love your partner. Things are really hard right now. If you're listening to this and you're here to create change, this is how we create change. Oh my goodness. I just freaking love the RAS, which I think is abundantly clear at this point. I bring the reticular activating system into my love journey process because it is such a powerful way to create change in our relationships. And if you haven't heard, my brand new self-paced program, Relationship Recharge, is launching super soon. So today, the date of this episode is November 11th, 2024. you can still hop on the waitlist at the link in the show notes to get access to the early birdie discount. The founding members of the pre-launch of my program are sharing their feedback now, and it is amazing. One woman shared that she noticed changes in her thinking within the first week. We know how much a change in our thinking affects our entire relationship, so this is freaking amazing. And another woman shared that after doing the program, she has way more compassion toward her husband. And she shared that now there's a lot less conflict and that it feels so good to not feel like they're constantly against each other. This makes me the happiest ever because this, oh my gosh, this is the power of compassion and changing your thinking and priming the RAS to think about different things, to see the good while applying new skills and tools that we never freaking learn in life until we do. And you can do that with Relationship Recharge. I would love to celebrate your wins too, because it is so inspiring. It is the best. Changes, they can happen. They are real, and they can even happen if your partner's not on board. So you can head to that link in the show notes to hop on the wait list to get that early birdie discount when it launches. So your intentional action for the day is to name something positive in your relationship. In this moment, think of one thing that you appreciate about your partner and make it a goal to notice more of those things. By consciously choosing to focus on the good, you're not just seeing your partner in a new light, like we've talked about, you're helping to create a reality where your relationship feels more supportive and fulfilling and connected, which is the absolute best. You can drop your appreciation in the comments too. Taking that extra intentional step to write it down in the comments and let me know is further telling your RAS, seeing the good is important to me. So that is amazing. And you are amazing. I am sending so much love into your day. I would love to see you on the wait list for Relationship Recharge so you can get that early birdie discount and we can celebrate your wins. Remember, and nothing changes if nothing changes. So let's have an intentional week. Bye-bye.